AI in Action, Halldale's podcast series which looks at how civil aviation, military, and other safety-critical industries are adopting AI in training. In this episode, looking ahead to DSEI, Andy Fawkes is joined by Toby Everitt of Metaverse VR.
In defence, we can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes.
BAE Systems' Lucy Walton.
How do you use training and simulation to start building trust in AI?
And Air Vice-Marshal, retired Gary Waterfall.
And the data's the data. The data doesn't lie.
AI in Action.
So hello everyone. My name is Andy Fawkes. Welcome to this AI in Action podcast. I am special correspondent of military simulation training and the host for AI in Action, which we run every month. We're here to help you navigate the fast-moving world of AI, particularly in workforce training and simulation, where it's safety critical. So civil aviation, here today, defence and wider safety critical industries. But I'm sure as AI advances, we may indeed even touch on the future warfare itself today, and that's will be interesting, I'm sure. And our interest here is very much the practical side of AI and not the theoretical. So it's very much AI in action. That is what we're talking about. So we've got an absolutely amazing panel today. I'm really excited for this. We, as a sort of media partner, I should say, for DSEI, we're very much looking forward to attending this event ourselves and supporting it. So on the panel, we have the DSEI Senior Military Advisor, who is Air Vice-Marshal retired Gary Waterfall. We have the Head of Training at Falcon Works for BAE Systems, Lucy Walton, and the CEO and founder of Metaverse VR, Toby Everitt. And shortly they will give a bit more background on themselves. So DSEI, the theme of this year's event, which I myself think is going to be a pretty pivotal one, is preparing the future force, which is obviously very much chimes, I think, what we're trying to do here with military simulation and training. So Gary, could you start, please, just explain the theme, perhaps how you see it shaping this year's DSEI and associated themes, and maybe a little bit about the show itself.
Yeah, sure. Andy, hi, and thanks very much for the welcome. Really enjoying the thought of coming here and actually speaking particularly about AI, and I'll come on to how important that is in a moment. So I joined Clarion from the Royal Air Force as their senior military advisor actually in 2020 during the height of COVID. And I think the world's changed immeasurably since I joined, and never has there been a greater need, I think, for the shows such as DSEI. We've seen the complexities in the geopolitical arena, not least of all in Ukraine, but you only have to stretch your eyes as far as the Indo-Pacific and then come back through the Middle East to realise that conflict and competition is very much an enduring theme through the 2020s. In fact, you put conflict, competition and COVID probably as the three big ones in this decade. We also in UK, we've seen 2 decades of political choice, I think, where we've been involved in wars not of national survival, but wars and conflicts of choice in terms of the size of our contribution, the scale of our contribution and the endurance of our contribution. But those things have changed. And now we see enduring conflicts around the world, and we see a need to upgun from the very base of our industrial heartland all the way forward to the future force. And therefore, the theme of preparing the future force has never been really more apposite. It was set over a year ago in partnership with the MOD, from MOD itself and also at the time Strategic Command. We worked very much hand in glove with MOD, but also what was DBT, Department for Business of Trade, and of course now Defence and Security Exports are folded in to the Ministry of Defence. So what do we mean by preparing the future force? It's, as I laid out a minute ago, it's bigger and it's broader than just the future Royal Air Force or Royal Navy or even that integrated frontline commands to be able to project power at a time and a moment of their choice. It's about not just UK, but around NATO and all of our allies and partners, preparing everything from the defence infrastructure the supply chain, the defence enterprise across industry and all partners, up to and including the effective military fighting force. So within the main theme of preparing the future force, we've got 3 sub-themes. Securing advantage, that talks very much about agile acquisition and supply chain security. Driving advantage, digital transformation, right at the heart of what we want to talk about today. And maintaining advantage, that is all about workforce management, what we're calling our next generation, which we'll turn the last day to in DSEI, having those really important discussions about how to attract the next generation coming through into that defence and security enterprise. When I look at DSEI for this year, it's bigger than ever. Excel has expanded. We are taking the whole of the new expansion as well as the original Excel Centre down in the Docklands. It runs from the 9th to the 12th of September. 45 plus countries are going to be there. 1,600 exhibitors, right from top defence companies to new emerging SMEs. In fact, almost half, 42%, are first-time exhibitors at DSEI. That's over 650 companies that either didn't exist in 23 or are new to the defence arena. And if you then move to the tech zone, which is our fastest growing, which is where you'll see all of the AI, over 100 of those companies are brand new. People like AWS, headline exhibitors, highlighting where we're now moving into this dual use technology. What's been applied very successfully in the commercial industry is now realizing that it's equally applicable into defence. So we're heading for probably the best and the biggest show that we've ever held down in the Excel.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to get some training in because I'm going to be walking around all these.
Yeah, you'll get your steps in, that's for sure.
I'll get my steps in for sure.
Yeah,
and,
get some trainers. Apparently they're trendy these days.
So yeah, so no, I think I'll need AI to help me go round. No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gary. Can we just move maybe then to the exhibition side itself and what we might be seeing? Lucy, could you just say more about your role in BAE Systems and also what we might expect to see on the stand AI wise, maybe for training, but also maybe more wider?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lucy Walton, Head of Training, Falcon Works. I've been in industry for 17 years and I'm responsible for developing our training strategy out into 2035 and all of the technologies and capabilities that we're going to need to support us with underpinning that, whether it's AI, machine learning, or the extended reality. The real piece for me here is technology has moved on a huge amount and it's moving at a pace we've never seen before. So it's how do we build the infrastructure to enable that technology and also the technological evolutions that we continue to expect to see. In terms of some of the AI that you'll see from a BAE Systems perspective, we're looking at it very much from a individual learner perspective, and we're also looking at it then from that collective training experience. So looking at things like how do you use artificial intelligence to do adaptive learning? How do you move away from linear pathways? How can AI start to understand where somebody already has skill sets and therefore they can go through the training system at a different pace, or where we potentially need to reinforce learning with individuals? So there's a lot around how we can use AI for individuals, but then also how can we use AI to produce things like really coherent data analytics? What is all of this masses and masses of data that we pull out of simulations actually telling us? That's the key thing. It's great having all of this data. And the brilliant thing with AI is it can analyze that data really quickly and give us insights. So working with SMEs to harness their AI in a much broader platform application.
Fantastic. I think we'll touch on that side of the theme later. And Toby, could you say talk about yourself, but and also your company and what we'll see at DSEI?
Yeah, thank you very much. So Toby Everitt, I'm ex-military. I was 25 years in the Army and the Navy as a pilot, and then left 10 years ago. But 3 years ago, set up Metaverse VR, identifying the need and the opportunity really around some of the new digital and extended reality technologies. And we've been supporting the Navy predominantly in the last few years in some of their training products, mostly in the subsurface space. So operating, in the higher classified domains to be able to give some new and immersive training experiences to submariners. And then we were lucky enough to win a Innovate grant in order to develop our AI product set, developing an emotive AI that ultimately understands the emotions and the effectiveness of training for the trainee. So usually within the immersive training environment. So we are one of those new SMEs at DSEI. When I set the business up 3 years ago, our head mark was to make DSEI 25, and ultimately everything has been, a route towards that path. So we have our own stand, and we will be there, with some of our products, ultimately demonstrating some of the areas that we've gone into, which is really high fidelity, uncrewed system simulation. So first person view, drones and uncrewed systems, and ultimately also the counter UAS systems in a really high fidelity test and evaluation environment, but also, as Lucy mentioned, bringing in human performance. So ultimately being able to give that real high fidelity physics replication of new UAS really quickly, so that the user can learn about the lessons from Ukraine, of the really high iterations of technologies, and then be able to help the user understand how their training is benefiting them. So it's these kinds of things that we'll be looking to demonstrate at DSEI, really to reflect everything that Gary just mentioned, but also be part of an SME ecosystem. So we really try and partner with other SMEs to build capability and be attractive, as a group. So that's really where we are aiming for in DSEI.
Do you know, Toby, I think, it's brilliant what you've managed to do in very few years. Just highlighting your role as an SME, we within Clarion working really close with the MOD, and with MOD, they've set themselves up to really help and assist the SMEs using DSEI as pretty much the shop window for that. So tuition throughout the week of those companies aren't yet on frameworks or whatever you call it, so they can, because I think from the outside and some of the companies I work with, it's still relatively opaque getting into the Ministry of Defence, which is a shame, because you sit there with the key to the door to unlock some of those conundrums, which Lucy, from a BAE perspective, sometimes the company's just too big to be agile enough and go round it. Whereas Toby and the work that Toby's done, and so many other the SMEs, they've got the time, the passion, the ingenuity, and it's how to bring them quickly into MOD or to a prime, which is why I think this DSEI more than ever is going to be so good in that respect.
They have been very good, actually. So all of the run up to the event itself has all been about where do you fit in, and how, as an organisation, can we help you get to be seen. I have to say, and Lucy, I imagine we'll come back, that's actually what Lucy does in Falcon Works, is identify these SMEs, and we are actually working with BAE. BAE is so large, we're working with lots of different divisions of them, because they all want what we provide, which is this new, this interactive digital training, environment. But ultimately, it is difficult to navigate, and defence has been quiet for 18 months. So, even the big primes have had to, tighten their belts. Imagine how hard it is for an SME who's trying to bring innovative AI products into the marketplace. We've actually ended up supporting the primes who also have original existing contracts. So that's just been, it has been tough, but we're really looking forward to the next few months.
Raises an interesting question I'd like to put to Lucy, actually, is how do you, I guess you get demand signal from the Ministry of Defence, or you kind of imagine what it should be in the future, and then how do you reach out to smaller companies? How do you go about that? And what do you see as the really important kind of trends AI wise, particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So we essentially have a look and we do our own market scanning out to that 2035. I think we're probably gone of an era where requirements came out in the traditional sense that they used to, whereas a prime, we would sit there and we would wait for 3,000 lines of requirements to come to us, and then we would respond with a compliance statement. I think we're probably much in a different era now, particularly at the pace of change. So we will have a look out to 2035. We'll scan all of our global markets, not just the UK, but we'll scan all of our customer markets. We'll have a look at common trends and problem sets that we see across them, and then we'll go out and we will generally target SMEs that we think can support us with that, and things like DSEI and iTech and the big shows. That's really where we get to do our first interactions with so many of these organizations. I think there's a huge growing trend in where we can use AI in training and simulation. And I think not only can we have a long list that I can go through around AI, but I think it's actually how do you use training and simulation to start building trust in AI? So we're expecting operators at some point in time to use autonomous and AI systems and make decisions in the battlefield using that AI. Actually, the training and simulation environment is a great place to build that trust. You know, we all, I think, now probably use ChatGPT, and we use it cautiously because we know it can sometimes throw up erroneous data. But actually, if you're then starting to use an AI application in the battlefield, it's around building confidence that what it's telling you is good and there is no erroneous data. It is explainable and we know why it's made that decision. So I think there's a lot around how can we use AI to stretch our resources. So there isn't enough workforce in the world. There isn't enough instructors in the world anymore. How can we use AI to not replace, but absolutely supplement and change the ratio of student to instructors? That's a really big thing. I think for us, we also see a lot around how AI can support the generation of simulation and simulated scenarios. So how can we use AI to feed those scenarios with new doctrine? So there's a huge amount of doctrine that we're seeing coming off the battlefield now, particularly around how drones are being employed. If you look at how they're being employed versus the doctrine that was probably written around the 1970s, you'll see a huge mismatch. So how can AI be pulling all of that open source intelligence together to then create new doctrine that you can feed into training simulations and environments? So how we use AI to process that data and then feed into simulations is going to be something that we need to do quicker than we've ever done before. That data that's coming off the battlefield needs to go in there quicker.
So Lucy, you mentioned that trust word there, that T word. It's so important, isn't it? I mean, it's a massive cultural change journey that people have got to be on. You know, I work across a number of companies. One of the companies I'm with, Lone Star Analysis, we're working within UK MOD to use the data that we've got to help using that data and data alone to provide the objective assessment through stochastic modeling what you're going to be like in the future. We still hit the boundary of those that refer their applied military judgment. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And you know, the data's the data. The data doesn't lie. And I think, you know, whereas the same individuals will go home this evening and use comparison websites to find out the cheapest holiday or the best car insurance, whatever that might be, and yet they're naturally reluctant to use their data to help better predict training solutions or what they might choose to do in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's because we consistently live on a data cleanse. So before people want to use data in AI models, I always feel that they want to cleanse that data. But actually, sometimes not cleansing the data and letting the AI surface some information from that data might be a more valuable nugget. So I think it's that we're not saying AI needs to eliminate the need for judgment, but it certainly sharpens where we apply our judgment. And I think that's the key. It's a tool to be used alongside human judgment, and the balance and ratio will change over time.
So I talk a fair amount about this. I did a podcast last week with Andy Starr, and I talked about, you know, warfighting remains this. It's a human endeavour. It really is. But we need to use AI to accelerate the decision making, to be faster and quicker and better than our adversaries. And that's what AI sits at the heart of it, I think. And you rightly point now to the training simulation, getting people on board at that early stage, learning by mistake, utilising AI, and therefore they're in a much better place on the battlefield.
And Toby, could you say about how you're putting AI into your products, or looking, you know, what do you see as the big opportunities here?
I mean, actually, you know, trust is definitely a really good place to start. One of the things that we've found is we've had to, because we're looking to deploy it in the defence space, we have to make it defence ready at the beginning. So there are companies trying to support the mod with AI products, but deploying it inside the mod's IT infrastructure is not easy. And so therefore we've had to make offline versions, ultimately create offline databases. It puts a pressure on the kind of compute power that you have access to. So we're doing some studies with, the modnet providers, ultimately to be able to run game engines with AI tool sets inside the mod infrastructure. So our products mostly revolve around game engine simulation. We have access to really good local talent pool in Portsmouth University, and it's open source, which people like, and therefore it's rapid iterations. It's very well funded by the game industry, so therefore as a simulation tool, it's very useful. And AIs generally can be used. Everyone else's AIs can also be used, and that's the other thing we're trying to deploy. Is there are some large organizations out there who want to own the AI backbone. Well, there's debate about whether you should have one AI backbone or you should have lots of different ones that then can't be poisoned once. So therefore, then, you don't trust it. So we've been trying to create an environment where like I said, we work with others, ingest their work and work together. So, for example, our UAS training system is going to be working with Bohemia's VBS. That's the UK's current, land terrain environment. We can work with future Gladiator ready for the Air Force's different simulations, and then Spartan ready for the Navy's collective training environment. This is where we're looking to deploy AI ultimately, is so that it fits with all of the different modeling and simulation architecture that the mod has. So for us at the moment, it's, like I said, around human performance. It's also interacting with a learning AI. So the more you use it, the more you interact with it, it learns about you. And I think it feeds into what Lucy was saying, which is ultimately more effective training benefits, so that you can speed up that process. Or if somebody's particularly good in this section, you can accelerate it and then give them more time in another part. This is what we're looking for in Future Combat Air System and Global Combat Air Program, which I support. Ultimately, it's this kind of future training that we're looking to enable with AI. And when it comes to the warfighter, the UK mod is going to invest heavily in UAS and drone technology, whether it's the Air Force in autonomous collaborative platforms, or whether it's in all of the different types of drones that the Army are going to buy. And the Navy in their hybrid Navy view, these are all going to need training, and we're trying to provide a UAS training system in our virtual sky that can fit into this different mosaic of people.
I think it's really interesting what Toby's saying around the individual training piece, because I think over time, as you use AI to learn about individuals, that then takes another step back again, where you can then start to use that data from a recruitment perspective. So something we're really interested in is, okay, how can we get enough trainees through the AI pipeline so we can then aggregate that data to create personas as to what makes a good air traffic controller, what makes a good drone pilot, what makes a good fast jet pilot, so that actually we can start to influence that aptitude and recruitment testing earlier. Wouldn't it be great if we could stream people even earlier, so that we can make our training systems more cost effective and more pace through those systems? So all of that data and that richness that we're now getting, again, we can use AI to start to have a look at what parameters might make somebody good at a particular type of role.
Going back to the issue of the future force, I'm just turning the discussion maybe the other way round. Is it's going to be a kind of interesting demand signal looking around the show, seeing what industry thinks defence need across the world. So it'd be very interesting, for example, how many drones are going to be there. But I think no one knows the answer to this, although you can look at the war in Ukraine. But how do you see warfare developing from the perspective of what kind of training do I need to prepare for this future war, particularly with the impact of AI? Gary, is that a question? That,
I mean, at DSEI, you're going to see a massive rise in, we'll just collectively call them drones, shall we? Across all the environments and counter UAS as well. You're going to see that we know we've got an incredible number of companies compared to what we've had hitherto. I guess, you know, I'm of the age where I can be a little bit of a stuck in the mud. The two areas I think which concern me are you can now optimize learning for the individual in a really good way. And I was at IHSA a couple of years ago where they had a cradle on someone's head, and they were making sure the training stayed in the sweet spot. So Toby and I, we both used to fly the same sort of aeroplane. We'd do a simulator of evolution, which would be in a really tough crosswind down an instrument approach, all the turbulence known to man. Toby, as a god, would be acing it. I'd be having all sorts of difficulties. And then what would happen is the software would just dial back the wind, dial back the temperature, dial back the cloud, so that I remained at that sweet spot of learning. It might mean I'd have to do 2 or 3 sorties, Toby would just do 1. But when I reached the front line, I'd have 2 or 3 more hours experience than Toby would have. So it's all well and good AIing ourselves to optimize the warfighter to get them onto the front line, because we need to do that. But we've got to make sure they've still got that requisite experience. And I guess my other one, which I would be concerned about, is with the proliferation of AI and reliance on the information that's coming to us at that lower level, some of those analysis are no longer needed. Some of those experts, when they get up to the next level, which we currently have, which is applying that filter, because as Lucy points out, it's to aid our decision making, to enable us to make a decision faster and more effective. There is a danger that by relying too much on AI, over time, we erode our skills of being able to interpret that ourselves. Discuss.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lucy, I mean, that question yourself, you know, looking at the future of warfare, how do you see AI impacting it and what it means for learning?
Yeah, so I absolutely echo Gary's concerns. You know, things like airmanship still remain relevant and important around those live elements. And is it classes you have more experience in a different way when you get to the front line? I think that the other side for it is around that logical reasoning piece. So if we rely too heavily on AI, do we lose our ability to do logical thinking? And at some point, if AI has been compromised, would you recognise it? There's probably still an element of judgment that you'll apply on top of any AI decision making, but over time, as you become more trusting because it's reliant, does there become a problem where you could be more susceptible to erroneous data that you haven't realised has made it into the system? So that's the concern. I think for me, around just the general workforce, it's around how do we upskill people in the use of AI, the development of AI, understanding AI standards and how to have explainable AI and how to best use AI. So I think it's not just around the physical workforce that will utilise AI, it's the people that will develop the AI and bring that to market and make sure that it's safe, it's secure, it's explainable. And that's the other side of it that for me is going to have a huge impact on workforce and changing structures of who we train.
Yeah. And Toby, you mentioned you're working with Portsmouth University. Do you, and the other thing, Lucy, you can answer this as well, and Gary, is how easy is it to get people who are kind of knowledgeable about AI or the theory of it into defence? I mean, I don't think anyone's like Zuckerberg giving up hundreds of millions of pounds.
No, it's getting better because more universities are now doing degrees in artificial intelligence, machine learning. They're, universities reflect, demand and new areas of technology. So we work with a number of them actually. That's another key area that we've tried to maximize as a small company. We're working with Southampton and the Southampton Uni Responsible AI Forum, Warwick, Kingston, Oxford, the Cambridge Triangle, ultimately in and around there. So academia are really pushing these areas. So there are obviously courses around it, and they get grants in order to help you develop things. We, have access to young and new trainees, obviously postgraduates and masters, but you are then competing, as in life, with all of the other organizations that, will pay huge amounts for people who are, very, very good in this area. So, for us, we need some people to be able to do it. We need to have that balance of the domain experts who understand what you're trying to achieve. So any company needs to have that balance of what are you trying to build for whom, and then have that technical ability to be able to deliver it. So, from my perspective, it's always a competitive market, but we're in quite a good one because we're almost like we have game, a game feel about the business. So there's a lot. We have 20 developers and modelers who are all half my age, who drastically bring the average age down, and they bring a really good curiosity and innovation area to our business. So and then we have the experienced team who go out there and understand the domain.
So, do you think there's less mystique around AI as we're bringing up this next generation? Because certainly when I started this voyage, it was all within the black box. The answer was 42. If you recognise the TV program, the answer was 42, and you won't know the ingredients that go into it. Whereas now I like to talk more about this, the glass box. So there's less secret sauce, as it were, and just take the answer. It's actually understanding the inputs that are going into the machine to give you the output.
Absolutely, and I think it's both the inputs and, as Lucy said, what the outputs are in terms of what are you trying to achieve and how are you going to build something that you can trust over time, especially in our area in defence. We attend loads of these, briefings, webinars, and a number of different ways in order to keep up to date with the market amongst SMEs. And it was interesting to hear that when, Tesla has the largest amount of input data that you can ever need in terms of a business, because they record every drive, every minute of every drive, in order to feed their AI autopilot. But somebody had put a QR code on a stop sign, which infected the decision making, and it meant going full power rather than brake or something like that. So all you need is something like that. If over time you get so content with believing everything that's happening and you don't have these protections in place, that's in defense we can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes. We can't have it. And so I think it's going to be it's going to need this transparency amongst our new software engineers and thought leaders, that really to take us along the pathway to having integrated AIs. For everyone that's doing something else is questioning whether it's right, or checking it, or defending it, I imagine.
Treat the AI like humans.
Yeah.
You don't trust everyone what they say.
Not to start off with.
No. And Lucy, about getting people into the business, how is that something that you struggle with, or?
I think we all recognise it's a very competitive market, as Toby said, but we are very fortunate to have a really strong apprentice and graduate programme. So we take on thousands of apprentices and graduates every year from across the UK and wider. And so we are very fortunate that we have specific software engineer and apprenticeship programs. We have modelling and simulation graduate programs, and I think that's really helping us to open up the recruitment process. We have some incredibly talented graduates that have just entered into our modelling and simulation team, and what they can bring and the experience they've had is very different than the experience even I had in school. When I was in school, software coding wasn't something we were taught, but now there's software academies, there's AI academies. People have a lot more access to online resources where they can train and teach around AI and software. So I think we're definitely seeing that generation filter through our graduate and apprenticeship programs at the moment.
And Gary, I mean, are you able to, do you know how many, I would say, young people are going to attend DSEI, or is there ways that you can encourage people to come into defence?
So obviously you can't just walk off the street and come into DSEI for all those very good reasons. Because it's before the start of university term, as much as we would love to have Excel on the last day, flooded with third year undergraduates, just to show them that you can still contribute to the defence and security enterprise without maybe joining the military, or indeed joining a big prime that's seemingly directly focused at a defence output with all of the dual use stuff. So what we're doing this time, we are encouraging academia from the job placement department at all the universities that are looking at where the future workforce will be, together with pertinent lecturers from those departments. Now, any of those two individuals can sponsor and bring in any of their undergraduates above the age of 18. And then we're going to have sort of trails around Excel, around DSEI, more optimized at those undergraduates coming around to expose them to the different aspects of life. We're also going to have academia. They're central to this debate. We're going to have some of the big primes and smallers in terms of the apprenticeship schemes, and those from the HR department that will help us, as well as, of course, the military themselves from an HR aspect, all to get around and discuss that thorny problem of how do we attract more people in. And I guess even you, Lucy, with all those great schemes, you've still got people who have to get over that barrier of I'm contributing effectively to war fighting. Even though it's, for us, it's very easily to discuss, actually it's not contributing to war fighting, it's concentrating on the health and well-being of UK, both from a prosperity and also keeping our country safe, which is the number one objective of any government, and we are just the same. So we've all got a role to play in making UK healthy, strong and secure, but it's how we translate that and allow people to see that market. So I don't know, Lucy, have you seen some of those barriers being knocked down? Because it'd be great to understand how we make it more transparent for people.
Yeah, so I think we're fortunate in that a lot of it is that we are part of the local community. So I think by design, BAE Systems in the areas it's worked has a long-standing relationship with the community, and people understand either generations have worked through BAE Systems over the last 30, 40 years. We've got people that are 4 generations into working in BAE Systems. So I definitely there's a huge generational piece. I think you often find that some of the individuals that have joined have had family members that were in the military. So they've obviously grown up with some level of military influence. But I also think recent events are starting to drive people into understanding the importance of deterrence again, and wanting to come and work at an organisation that protects those that protects us. I do think that people resonate with that as a commitment and a message. So I think we're probably fortunate by the communities that we've been associated with for many, many years. And I think that really helps to drive the continuing recruitment that we see year on year. I think we're up to something like 2,700 graduates and apprentices every year at the moment. So the number rises annually.
I've been working with a group of new graduates at Walton, and it was really interesting because I mean they were just excellent, and also one of them's parents were in the military, and the other one was also already working at BAE. So yeah, that was just it's interesting to see how they follow that pathway. And just follow on from one question, a point there, Gary. The other thing is the international element of DSEI. We've been approached as an SME by a number of different international organizations, and UK PLC obviously wants a strong export from a strong UK, a strong export element. And the last government said, we want AI to be a really big export point for us. So we're really looking forward to a number of different delegations, and the DSEI team are really good in the fact that they will arrange that, in order to support even, the smaller teams, because of course they can't get everywhere, and they will generally go to the primes because the primes will have massive stands with lots of things to cover in a shortish space of time. And, that's not a complaint, that's just life. But really what they do is they will offer to be able to support that. And so export for us in an AI perspective, what I find interesting is, Middle East, which I know, Lucy, you're focused on in some of your areas, ultimately are very interested in UK as a provider of top quality products in and around the AI, machine learning space. So that's just something else.
And yeah, Toby, that's the last of my bingo card in terms of the export. Within what was it, 14.5 billion in 2023 of exports in the defence enterprise. You're going to have over 45 countries exhibiting at DSEI. Many more from overseas delegations will be visiting DSEI. And these are just the exhibitors. There'll be loads of other visitors, and they all want to know what UK is doing. We sit in a really proud place within Europe with our relationship with the USA. When we look at where we sit around the world, and more people are coming to UK to get some of those answers, the tricky conundrums. And with a prosperity drive that's underway, DSE now, as we spent earlier, now moved into MOD. What I'm heartened by is the help and support you're getting, both from our team within Clarion, but also from DSEI, because we are both here to help, frankly, to help drive and continue that thrive and prosper, both not in UK, but also facing overseas.
Great. We're the time has marched on as it nearly always does, so it's fantastic. I just want to leave one last question to you all, and I don't think it's controversial particularly, but I think if you're in the MOD, I used to be, and you're looking at AI, you're looking at all these companies out there. Partly you want to compete, get the best, but also you want people to work together. Maybe DSEI is in a way a forum for helping that conversation, but I just wonder, what do you judge if you were a defence customer, not necessarily UK or any nation around the world, how do you decide what's the best way forward with AI? Because it is so competitive.
So I don't think there is a best way forward. I think there's loads of least wrong solutions when the time and the moment is right. And I think part of the problem, and I see this from across the other companies I have in my portfolio, is traditional defence wants to wait until the moment is just right and they've got all the information they possibly can before they take that leap into the AI unknown. Frankly, they need to get another app for their iPhone and realise that it may have a short shelf life, it may have a long shelf life, but the only way you're going to realise that is by doing it, practicing it and learning. And then don't be afraid to keep horizon scanning and realise there are other there's. Well, I really pay tribute to the work you've done, Lucy, into Odyssey and everything else, in just having a call and bringing everyone around you and harnessing all of the SMEs to in this Petri dish to get the classic sum of it far greater than all of those individual components. And I think if I were in defence, that's where I'd like to see defence move to.
Yes, and Lucy, what's your perspective on that question?
Yeah, I think I echo it. I think we need to stop worrying about over-speccing requirements, and we need to give industry problem statements. I think Gary might have said it right at the very beginning. This is now a national endeavour. There is more work out there than there is people and capabilities available now. So you have to bring consortiums together to solve problems. And I think we want to keep competitiveness, and perhaps sometimes in doing the quick rapid fire rounds and the consortiums, it will drive competitiveness because you want to stay in the game. So is that not what we want the MOD to do, to drive that competitiveness, to drive the best products that they could possibly need to support them? So from my perspective, it is about actually bringing consortiums together around a problem statement and going from there. And it might be that 2 of those 3 are fantastic, and 1, it might be that you have to make the decision to really make that difficult decision on no go. But you probably spent less time and money doing that mini experiment than you would have done spending 3 years writing a requirement and running a competition.
And Toby, what's your your view on that question?
I don't know. I've lived this experience for 3 years, and it can be quite emotional. So from my perspective, SMEs can't afford to just do a whole load of things on their own to try and showcase their capabilities. We live off getting paid for projects unless you're a business that has secured seed funding in some way or other, but even then you're just developing something to potentially do it. So the situation that Lucy manages in Falcon Works is BAE themselves fund small projects, which is the lifeblood of some of these small businesses, and then ultimately, as a whole, you can then demonstrate your capability. How does the MOD actually procure that? Well, in that instance, it's still in through a prime, which is no problem for some of the smaller businesses because you still need that almost parental help, in order to get off the ground. When you're a bit more of an established business, we've been going 3 years. We're on all the frameworks. We've provided to the MOD directly. We can do things ourselves, but bidding for £100 million project is probably not something that would probably get through right now for us. So, it's having that risk appetite that Gary talks about. I still don't believe they're there. Yes, I really don't. I just don't. Even though defence innovation is meant to be, coalescing around a single route, a budget each year, we'll try things, we'll let them fail. I just think there's still a bit too much inertia right now. I have belief that it'll get there, but right now it still falls down to the same structures, because you have people that have been in the business for a very long time that follow the same procedures and go, well, have they got their ISO accreditations, or have they got 35 million in the bank? Have they done, so all of these things. Yes, we'd like to buy that AI now. Look at it, it's current, it's ready to go, but actually there's often a lot of blockers in the way. So I think coalescing around a challenge statement with somebody who's willing to stand there and plant the flag and maybe help some of the smaller businesses is very much a way to go. And we personally are in 3 or 4 of those exact environments. So, for us, that is a route to get some of our really innovative technologies in front of the customer, and places like DSEI, where hopefully people will come and see it for themselves.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Toby. I mean, and just, I guess finally, Gary, I guess decision makers from the MOD will be there to talk about these issues and hear what people have to say. So, well, we will on our website. We'll be putting this video up soon. Will people still be able to apply to attend, Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. Just Google DSEI, and it will be up there in terms of how to attend and at what level to attend, in terms of either basic visitor, or as the costs go up, you can then get a greater level of interaction on participation, including scheduling meetings, etc.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to draw it to a close. I just want to thank you all, Gary, Lucy and Toby, for your excellent input this afternoon. I found it really interesting. I didn't really have to say too much. It was absolutely fantastic. I think we've got a huge impression of the scale of DSEI and how much there'll be to see, not just with AI, but just in general. It's going to be absolutely massive and really important. I think we did talk about trust quite a bit, but not perhaps getting in the way of actually just giving things a go. And I think, Gary, when you said about just having an app on your iPhone was a good, very nice, clear thing to imagine. And so thank you for that. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed today, and see you at the next AI in Action. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andy.